So I'm going to turn this session over to Nicole Best, also another very good communicator in the region. Somebody who's also a woman, who's also very passionate about nutrition security, and raising children to eat properly. So I hope she matches her two strengths, communications and good nutrition, to lead us through this last square table, round of discussions. Nicole.
We want to talk about strengthening communication and knowledge sharing for food and nutrition security, food and nutrition policy, and how we can make it happen, how we can get the information that we've gleaned here for the past 4 days. Some concepts, some ideas as to how we can get that information where it belongs, on the tables, at homes, in the stomachs of our children. So we get started with you. Please help us with your name, I'm sorry.
My name is Tony Cyril. I work in agriculture, extension, and more like livestock unit. I think most of us here are agrarian based, so to us food is a given. But in addition to the food and nutrition aspect, we need to tag along with the other entities in the industry, in the government, like health. So, like, look at our plate today. After we produce the breadfruit and so I think the other departments should come in and inform the public on how we can be prepared. Rather than seeing a Dr. Dashing on your plate, but see how the provision was seasoned up nice with some little cubes. Make it interesting and entertaining for especially the children, so they can get to grow to like the stuff. Because you have instances where children like McDonald's without even tasting it. Because that's what they see, that's what they know. And we need to get back to youth, because I think we are now losing the culture of agriculture. And if we forget what it is to grow crops, we'll become an importing nation. I mean, that's already, it looks like that's the path we're heading. So I think it's beyond only agriculture to move agriculture, because that's what we're already doing. So sometimes it looks like almost speaking to the choir. But we need to bring in the tourism, the education, and the health to make people know that there are other things. It's not about growing the food, but preparing it, packaging it, make the food entertaining, make it interesting, make it obviously nice. So that's my take on how we can bring forth the full nutrition aspects to the other people. Thank you.
Okay, good day. I'm Adisa Trotter from the Ministry of Agriculture. I don't talk a lot. I don't know. There are a lot of things with information and data sets. And it's always a problem, a sort of recurring problem, to have what we call reliable data. And somehow, I don't know how we're going to tackle that problem. I guess when we sit at the round table, we could sort of come up with the solutions. But there are a lot of different, what we call strategies that have been tried over and over. Consultants come, they give their opinion, they start something, but the sustainability of actually continuing programs to have reliable data, it's a problem. So I'm glad we could come together as a people and try to deal with the issue and see how we could actually come up with programs to look at reliable information and communication. For example, the Ministry of Agriculture is responsible for generating production data. But then the question lies, what production data you're looking for? People want exact production information, but is that practical? Can you actually go out, for instance, what you have seen in Dominica, can you actually go out and capture all the farmers' information and have it in real time? It's a problem that we have. For example, when you come to marketing, the Ministry of Trade wants that information, but it's a problem to actually get that information. So here in the ministry, we try different things, but presently we are now looking at a technology called GIS, the GPS technology, Geographic Information Systems. You use these global position system handhelds, where you could go out to the farmer, pick up his information, and in real time then transfer it on the computer and you could have it out. But there's a saying goes, GIGO, garbage in and garbage out. So in the process of collecting data, you then have to go out and verify that information. So it's still a problem to have that real-time information where you have the field information, and then when you pass it out to the people who want it, they now question the accuracy of that information. So when we look at data sets and information, it's a very troublesome area, I want to say, because sometimes the question comes up with extension. Like this morning we were looking at the many different roles and functions of extension. Are we now going to transform them into data collectors? You see, it's a question that is still out there. I mean, who is responsible for actually collecting up-to-date information for the different ministries? Because all ministries want information from agriculture. But can extension actually provide that information with all the other roles that they have? So it's a lot of issues when you look at information. Now, the communication aspect in passing on information to the farmers, it's something that is relevant. But I seem to have a problem with communication that we pass out and how adequate it is for the farmer to actually take up that communication and make a difference on his farm. Because here in the ministry we communicate with our farmers, for instance, landscaping, contour barriers, drainage. But to Mr. Farmer, is he able to actually take up those interventions on his farm? Because to the farmer, if it doesn't make economic sense for him, then it's a problem for him to actually take up that technology, or for him to see the usefulness and the benefits of it. Some farmers, according to their, how they call it, their interests, if they really see the need to do it, they will take it up. But the majority of farmers, no matter how much you communicate a message to them, it's still, they still have a problem to actually take up that intervention. So I guess as we sit at a round table, I mean, it's critical for us to communicate the information and actually ensure that the farmer could employ it on his farm. So I guess we need to sit down and look at those issues. I guess.
Thank you. Yes.
We just came from Mr. Moise, right? And he says that it doesn't make sense trying to, well, not doesn't make sense, my own interpretation, that dealing with the older farmer, it's a lost cause. Which farmers does the ministry communicate with? Is it are they the young upcoming farmers or the stalwarts who have been in there for a long time? And it's because they're at that age level where no matter how you communicate what you need to communicate, they may not take it up. So does the ministry understand that probably they need to shift its target audience to the younger farmers in terms of communications and just facilitate the older ones who are going to do the same things over and over but not change, just to make sure that the extension presence is with them, but not try to change them in any one way if they're not willing? Because Mr. Moise did say once you have a willing partner, things happen. So what is who you're communicating with? And is there a different strategy, right, in terms of the farmer groups that you're communicating with? And what difference would it make now in your new communication? So with what do you call them, one-page brochures, or is it with 5-page document, or is it with radio, or is it with, you know, what communication tools you use?
Facebook and tweeting.
Before I actually tackle that issue, the question always comes up as, what is a farmer? How do we define what is a farmer? So here in the ministry, we have that issue when we deal with farmers who are full-time and part-time. As an extension, it would be difficult to meet part-time farmers on the field. You're more likely to meet the full-time farmers. And the full-time farmers are those who are aged. The youths, you will get them doing part-time farming, and they also do other activities such as security and tour guiding. Yeah. So it's sometimes a problem to actually meet the young farmers on the field. You might get 1, 2. So when we communicate, we go out on the field and we deal with the farmers. This is one of the ways.
The full-time ones. The
full-time farmers, the majority. But we also use the media to communicate to farmers as well. For instance, the same Tristitia issue we had, it was, we used the television, the radio, newspaper. We also most of our communication strategy is to use all the media that's possible. And when we go, we use brochures as well to disseminate information. So we try many ways. But when you talk about the young and the old farmers, the message is for all.
The message, and we all agree that the message is for all, but the transportation, the vehicle you use to get the message to the different groups of farmers that you have, that may not be adequate for all. Because let's put it in the context of, I don't know if you guys in the other islands have those big wooden buses. Yeah. You have to climb up on, yes. Yes, it's a wooden bus. No. Yes, you climb up onto those buses. Now that, Julius, will not be adequate for granny and sortiers, right? But I could climb up on one of those. You understand what I'm saying? The vehicle that you use to get the message across, is there a consideration to alter, to change, to begin using new vehicle? Because you, like you rightly said, you do not meet the part-time farmers on the farm. You don't meet them. But the message, as you also said, is for all. So how do they get the message? On their cell phones, on their tablets, on their...
Through television and radio.
Oh, that's the other means.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of our people, after they leave the farm, 6 o'clock they sit down, listen to the radio, watch the news, and what the information that they pick up will generally be covered using that sort of media. Yeah, but
you wanted to say something else? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you all use both languages to communicate?
Yes. There is a program on the national radio called Esperias Creole, where we use that a lot to communicate with farmers, because a lot of them, that's their language.
Like the older folks who speak more Creole, right?
Yes.
Is that a farmer calling you? Sorry, don't answer that. Do you have another point?
I'm just curious, because using the brochure I had this morning, and we should make some more of it, I found that language so simple. And the choice of the disease, yellow fever. I don't think anybody in terms said they know yellow fever, but the age of the farmers could identify with that. So I'm kind of curious that you are saying that your method is not being effective, as you're suggesting.
The effectiveness in terms of actually looking at the technologies that we want to bring to the farmer. For example, the field visits that you conducted, how many of them you actually see using grass barriers on the slopes that are like more than 5 degrees? Those with the contour drains. Some farmers, they plant in distance, they don't always follow the recommended tech packs that we try to bring across to them.
And I would ask, whose fault is it if they're not using it? Is it that you have been to them and they're refusing to use it?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that we bring the message across, but somehow it seems to be a problem to actually take up that message that we bring to them.
What I'm seeing coming out here is the lack of standards, something which is standardized for farmers to follow. I can share some experiences as a communication officer within the ministry in Antigua. What we have been doing really to get to the farmer, because we realize and we accept that there is a gap between extension, between the ministry and the farmers themselves. Now, in order to get to them, what we do is to work with the organizations. Yes, we have a number of farmers organizations. Once we can get to them, because we realize that farmers are listening to themselves and they are not listening to the extension officers. So we work with the organization, we will set up training in collaboration with them, and we will see how much we could get that information across to them. Now, sometimes, as Christopher indicated, I haven't seen that brochure, but he said that it was very simple, which is very good. But how many times we produce these brochures and farmers don't read them because they just do not have the time? How many times we will be on the radio talking 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock, or even on the television, about what farmers are to do, when in fact they're not listening because they're out there in the field. So it is a method where we will have to look at what are the best practices and see how much we can work with them.
As you mentioned that, the idea just came back to me. The other communication tool that we use is to hold farmers' meetings. The extension usually interfaces with the different farmers at particular times of the day, usually in the afternoon, in the early mornings, where we pull a group of farmers together in a particular area and try to communicate that message to them as well.
What is the attendance like at those meetings?
Well, yeah, that's a beautiful question. But the major...
It depends on the time of day.
It depends on the time of the day. Usually if it's in the afternoon, after 5, you might get farmers out, but the problem comes should extension work after 5.
That becomes a financial problem for the ministry.
Well,
Universal, Grenada has it.
but to me, working at these hours, well, again, I cannot say it's the best hours because at that time, Mr. Farmer might be a bit tired coming out from his garden. So there are a lot of issues, but the farmers' meetings have shown a sort of level of success when you want to communicate different messages. So when a group of 30 to 50 farmers gather, they now go and spread the message around to the other farmers.
So it has been working. Though you may not have a whole bunch of farmers coming out, the handful that come out, they actually spread the message so that that method of the meetings works?
Yes, I would say there is success in these meetings.
Just going back to what you were saying with some of the interventions that you recommend to the farmers and they don't take them up. My experience with it has been sometimes how you explain it to them. Sometimes if, like, say you're doing the contour planting or the contour drains to slow down water going down the slope, if you let them come up with the idea, sometimes you just put the questions to them, how can you slow down the water, or how can you generate mulch to put over here, because that's one of the reasons that you grow the grass contours, is so that you could have mulch that you could use close to your site. Then it gets them thinking of how they could ease their work in certain ways, or if you're saying that nutrients are flowing off the slope, you just kind of phrase the question to them, how can you slow these nutrients leaving your soil, so that instead of you coming and saying this is what you need to do, you ask them to come up with the idea themselves, kind of thing. Sometimes I find that helps, so that you just lead them to where you want them to go, kind of thing, but then after that you let them go themselves, and that's just one of the approaches that I find sometimes works.
Empowerment.
Yeah, you just almost let them come up with these solutions themselves. You let them walk through some of the principles of what you want to achieve, but let them come up with the solution, and then sometimes they feel they can implement it better because it's their idea almost.
Thank you very much. Let's... you're going to wrap up.
You see, one of the... Well, I wouldn't want to say that our farmers are hard-headed, you know. But one of the problems that I saw quite in the 90s, when the banana industry was going through a crisis, there was appeal to farmers to diversify in their production system. But a lot of farmers, to them, is what makes economic sense. The bananas were bringing in the money, then they'll keep on planting bananas. But then when they actually face the crisis, it hit home. Then what you find, a population of 5,000 farmers just dropped to over 500 farmers. But all along, the message, extension, the ministry were working to try to get farmers to diversify in their production with all the different crops they could plant, the different technologies that go along. But to Mr. Farmer, banana was king, so he couldn't see beyond that.
Well, before you go any further, because we want to move on to the other presenters and participants now, In Dominica, you don't just have banana farmers. You've got farmers, orange farmers, and we just came from the pineapple farm. Do you have similar challenges with these other farmers, those who produce oranges and pineapple and coffee and so? The challenges that you face with the banana farmers, who are sometimes slow in implementing your suggestions. Do you have that challenge with the other farmers?
Not that much. I want to say that the other farmers, they are, well, from what I know, I believe that they're taking their advice, but the challenge is sometimes faced with the ministry to actually deal with the problem. Because, for instance, the Tristacea virus that was tackling the citrus industry, farmers had, they followed the recommendations, they did the agronomic practices that were expected. But the virus was beyond them. They couldn't control it. So it was left now to the ministry to intervene. So the non-banana farmers, it all depends on the message that you bring to them and what, if it makes economic sense. If it does, they take it. If not, they put it aside.
Our regional communicators, Julius Giddens. Please get up, Julius, and communicate about the challenges we face. Oh no, I'm sorry, you're going to have this one.
Thank you for the introduction, but as highly pumped up and unnecessary as it usually is. But thank you. What is the most powerful medium of communication known to humankind?
TV.
Mouth?
Face.
Hoof and mouth disease? What is it? Facebook. Face. To face. So if face-to-face communication is the most powerful, because I've never seen anybody brush their teeth as a child by watching TV, is your mother, your father say, go brush your teeth. And if electronic media were so powerful, we wouldn't have AIDS. We wouldn't have drugs. We wouldn't have disease. Because we would just turn on the TV, get the information, silver bullet, and they're going to do what they're supposed to do, like machines. So the political parties would love that. They're the only people who think that the media can win elections for them. The only people. And so they put plenty of money. And I can give you example after example after example in the Caribbean of millions and millions of dollars being poured into a media campaign to support an election campaign, and they're the worst, they get the worst drubbing, the worst defeats in human history.
No, they're just paying bribes in a different way.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the media part of it.
Yeah,
right?
Bribing the media to support them.
They can do that, but the people, it makes no difference because people don't operate like that. The theory of the silver bullet or hypodermic needle, I shoot you full of information and you're immunized, it doesn't work like that. So if therefore the most powerful form of communication known to humanity is face-to-face, interpersonal communication, who then would be the most powerful people, powerful communicators in the Ministry of Agriculture? The extension officers put up poster and go on TV and radio? Is that their everyday work? Like a journalist? No. They're on the front line. They're the most likely people to achieve success in changing behavior. And so I am not as fearful about the prospects for communication to work if you understand the medium of communication that you will use. Run horses for courses. Use the tools in the way that they're supposed to be used. There's a reason why people still listen to the radio in the Caribbean. It is the most and by virtue of it being the most penetrative form of electronic communication. When you get up in the morning, I can pretty much assure you that before you get to work, you would have listened to the radio more likely than you would have watched television. Because you have to sit, you have to have electricity, you have to sit and watch it. And it's expensive, and it doesn't give half as much power as the sexiness of pictures might suggest. So I would like you to understand the limitations and the purpose for each medium. run horses for courses. You expect people to plant a new crop, change a practice, do something differently by putting it on the farmers program on the radio? If it doesn't work at the CXC level when you write your essay, you know, you write a nice long essay, and you figure, I should get the mark, I should get the grade 1, and you end up with a 5. We do that in every aspect of communication in the Caribbean. Because by the very virtue of the effort, the enormous energy we have expended, the long speech by the minister, with syllables stretching from here to Roseau. And we expect, not only that, but we then expect that Granny in Celebia or Granny in Soufrière will understand that, and that Granny's children will care. And it doesn't, you don't have to have a master's degree to be like a fish with your eyes glazed over when you've been bombarded with modalities and paradigms. There really does need to be a paradigm shift. I can tell fellow academics that, or even fellow journalists, some of them. But we have to get back to basics about how to use each medium. The communications units in the ministries of agriculture need to understand that communications is not PR. Media relations, sending out a press release, and you know, you fire them off at will, and you instantly feel that because you can take your document and you can append it to a report, and you can show the minister and the PS, hey, I do work for a change. But what change have you actually effected? Press releases, many of them, unfortunately, there are some people in communications who boast that their press releases are run verbatim. And they think that they've succeeded. That is a failure. Because it means that the stiff language that is used, which was used to please the minister, to communicate to him, or the PS, one of the PS will understand any minister anyway, is not going to penetrate the people you're actually trying to reach. Please, I will talk until I'm blue, until you take the microphone from me, because it is vital. The hardest thing that Caribbean people can do is communicate in simple sentences without 10 and 5 syllables. What then would be the best time for extension officers to meet young farmers? What is the best time and the best place, really, to meet young farmers, to get to young farmers?
Online anytime.
Online.
Anytime.
Yes. Again, we made these assumptions. They need a little science along with the art. The best place to meet young farmers, I would suggest to you, is in the primary school. How many of you have actually gone into primary schools on a consistent basis? Not this year for World Food Week and then not again next year? How can we expect children at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the most formative period of their lives, and they have not seen and understood a farmer? They need to understand a farmer in many different guises. Not the old man with the crooked teeth and the boots. They need to see the farmer as scientist. They need to see the farmer as businessman. They need to see the farmer as politician too, advocating for change.
Interjection.
Not a partisan person.
Question. How effective do you believe that approach would be in terms of reaching the young farmer in the primary school if that primary school does not have a school backyard garden where the young farmer can actually get down and dirty?
The first place that I learned about the parts of a hibiscus flower was in secondary school, was in primary school. And I lived in an urban setting. And unfortunately, I am, as you can tell, a little bit older. And so I had the experience, along with good friends like, who's not here, my good friend Paul who's at UE, that the garden was the place for punishment, was the place for the not so bright kids in the primary school. That obviously has to change, because the technology And the sophistication has moved to a point where the farm is highly sophisticated, highly diversified, can do so many different things. Craft, food, shelter, tourism. So all I'm saying to you is there are things that we do on a consistent basis in the curriculum in which we can involve extension people on a more consistent basis, or you can take some people who are doing the communication, take them out of writing the minister's press releases and go into communication. Animal husbandry, sustainable development.
You've just raised another answer, and I don't know if that's what these people are going to attack here. The garden, a place for punishment. Is that what you're going to attack?
No, I'm saying to you that is my...
You see, why I'm saying you've raised an answer
generation. It is not the generation to come.
Because it means that there must be some sort of mind change in adults. Because it's adults that are perpetuating the idea that the garden is a place for punishment. I'm just saying that's another answer you've raised. You and then you.
Okay, Julius, you know that I'm from the Ministry of Food Production in Trinidad, and I'm Director of Corporate Communications. I'm surrounded by my communications colleague in Antigua. I thought you were dealing with us before. From Antigua, and then Jamaica.
Yes.
In terms of my experience, I understand what you're saying in terms of the press releases and writing the minister's press releases. I'm not sure for Jamaica and Antigua, but my experience in Trinidad has been that I am empowered to script press releases, or to script and issue messages in very reader-friendly languages. My minister or my permanent secretary does not vet my press releases before they go out, because I have been empowered to understand and appreciate that we need to communicate with our farmers and our constituents, farmers inclusive, and use simple enough language that we get our message across. And sometimes the press releases are in fact published verbatim. I don't see it as a success per se, but I see it as the media recognizing that I have a healthy appreciation for the nature of how the message altogether goes in terms of my language, and that makes it easier for them to do their job. That is my experience.
Can I just interject? Because what usually happens is that the Jamaicans and the Antiguans and now the Trinidadians will jump and say, not over in my country. I'm just going to bring you, everybody can say that. But I can also tell you about instances where, as I just finished a few months ago training in Grenada, and the communications person is here, and he has, and all of them across the civil service came to the training, and they said, but you know, when you teach us how to write simple declarative sentences and the 5 W's and the H and all of even the basics, I go back.
And you can't put it in.
And the language, they said, do not write it like that. The permanent secretary says that, who is not trained in communication. So we can spend all afternoon saying, hey, I'm not like that.
But I'm not talking generally. I'm just telling my experience currently.
Well, let me get
it's not that way.
Right, but there are other things that I want you to move beyond the press release. Before you joined the ministry, and I remember mentioning it, I was in Trinidad, and in the Sunday paper, as is the most unusual and most interesting supplement you might ever see in a newspaper, it was a packet of seeds, right? On that paper card packet of seeds, it might have been pumpkin, there was a range, pumpkin, corn, simple things, big things that can't get lost, and pigeon peas, and little notes about how to grow these things. A very successful thing that we've seen in Barbados, there's an agriculture page, it might be sponsored. This is an opportunity for partnership with private and public sector. And even the most basic information on plants, on foods and so on. Not just the usual growth time, fertilizer, thing. It has to be a little bit more than that. And I've seen in my own experience, I've seen my parents cut it out and keep it. So you can go at that end, you can do the whole poster stuff, but I want to get back to the most powerful form of communication. And I'm saying to you that you have an example, you've got an example that was raised only today about the farm field school. I would strongly suggest that you really seriously look at your whole communications matrix and run horses for courses. Understand your audience. That's the first rule of communicating. And so the communications officers in the ministry must not be people who are actually even doing communication themselves. They are people who are training communicators. There are basic techniques in communicating to resistant audiences. That information is there. and this is where you can work in partnership with CTA and so on, they've done extensive work on this. How to communicate tough messages to hard-headed people. And if you master that those communication skills, you should be a very wealthy consultant at the end of it as well.
Okay, Judas, we've got an intervention here and another one is there before.
Okay.
Yes, I'm happy that you were speaking about the fact that most people would tend to listen to the radio. Because this morning I heard you speaking about something else that you would have been, I think some radio program that you would have been hearing since the 19 whatever, right? And you were saying that you were kind of tired of hearing that same radio program for years and years and years, right? But the fact remains that radio is the most powerful of all media, because even though we do have a crop of farmers coming now, of younger farmers who tend to read, and even though my friend here from Jamaica spoke about the brochure, which is very simple, farmers don't like to read. Whether they are young, middle-aged, or old, they generally don't like to read. And even though some of them are reading the newspaper now, they do not like to read generally.
I want you to understand it's a mix. It's not one thing.
I understand what you're saying.
I need to correct you though. Radio is not the most powerful medium. I've started up. You gotta deal with the science. Right? We cannot change the law of gravity. The most powerful and effective form of communication has been, and will remain, person-to-person communication. You can't beat that.
I know, I was talking about the media.
When you use radio, you have to understand what you're using radio for. Radio now is used to, and especially television, but radio can take you now to more information by calling up the ministry, by perhaps going to a website to get the technical long-form data that you all read on radio and expect people to understand. You have to understand how to even use the radio medium. And I'm saying a long 5, 10, 15-minute monologue, that's not radio. And it's not effective radio. So understand how to use the medium. And so you have the professionals who I hope are trained in communication, not in PR, in communication. And understand that and can really come out and use the science effectively, so that when you go out there, you are not throwing really seeds on shallow ground.
I totally understand what you're saying.
Okay.
But I was just saying that, I mean, when you really want to have a captive audience, the radio is really the thing to use, because everybody listens to the radio. Everybody listens to it. And especially now that you have...
I haven't listened to the radio, so you cannot generalize.
But at least I'm talking about my context. Everybody listens to the radio, right?
I like to be accurate. You know, I can't say everybody.
You cannot say everybody.
Yes, but to understand.
Listen, so you mean you don't listen to the radio at all?
Television, you catch the radio.
You also have to understand that different age groups use radio differently. So when you have to understand that if you're going to get people to come to youth and agriculture expo or something like that. Suppose you had some activity, some face-to-face activity, a forum, whatever it is, exhibition, whatever it is. To go on the morning show at 8:30 on Radio St. Lucia wouldn't make any sense. Or whatever Gab Fest that there is on national radio, as there is throughout our Caribbean countries. You might have to use the DJ, the short 30-seconder, and you must understand that your message is not only about farming. It can go beyond that. It goes towards, it can be about energy conservation. It can be about water conservation. These are things, and understanding the role of trees. I'm sure you folks in forestry will love to say that. But understand that there are also values that you need to communicate in your messages. So for example, I know you want to spread the gospel of permaculture, but you might want to extract the values of permaculture and promote those and individual values of permaculture. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not greenhouses, Maxime. You understand? The values that also need to be communicated and the benefits for everybody, while on the road to changing attitudes altogether and getting away from oil-based agriculture.
Another intervention here, Julius. Two more, actually.
Yeah. Julius, I just want to throw this actually not only out to you, but to everyone. How effectively are we using the success stories for example, in Dominca, like Mr. Pineapple, okay? Are you carrying them, are you taking them to the schools, the career fairs, you know, and things like that? Two, we don't glamorize, and I'm saying glamorize very loosely, but that everybody understands. We don't glamorize agriculture as much as we glamorize, let's say, the legal profession or the engineering profession. When we're having awards, sometimes you don't have to have them in the best hotels, etc., etc. You don't see a big splash that the Agricultural Society or whoever is hosting it, sponsored by whatever agencies and so on, is having this, you know, these awards and so on. So we also, we being all the dots here and so on, we also need to big us up some more. You know, we need to profile us a little higher than I don't know what obtains in other countries. Again, I'm just throwing that out. And then what is the last point now? It was the success stories, the glamorizing. I can't remember the third point, but anyway, I said I'd just throw that out just to get some comments and so.
Steve will tell you that, I mean, it's a joke, but it's a serious joke. My simple message in boiling up, I really boil down him like Baji, if you mind my saying so. The farmer who drives a BMW. If you and he doesn't grow
yeah,
he doesn't grow psychotropic and
no.
Right? At least not apart from his medicinal use and so.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that if you start to portray farmers in different guises, using technology, in front of a computer, looking down the barrel of a microscope, we never see agriculture like that. And I cannot imagine that we can go into another century not seeing agriculture like that, because it's been like that for a very long time. Going back even to the 18th century when the microscope started to become in wide use. So I need people to understand that there are different guises that we must portray farmers. And yes, success stories. And I wanted to share
what you're doing. You're
some success stories in communication on farm.
You're underscoring the point that I made, where we need to have that mindset change. Agriculture is not punishment; it is fun. And when I'm about to wrap up, I'll give you some stories from my life, how I try to make my children see agriculture as fun. We've got Chris now, and then Florence. No.
Evan, yeah.
Eric, which country are you from? Huh? Nevis.
Yes.
But your farmers don't use pesticides and those things?
Of course they do. Why?
So, but no, you can't. You keep insisting that farmers don't read. Yeah. You cannot apply those chemicals effectively. You need to know the expiration dates and that kind of thing.
I didn't say they
and the
read.
Nobody keep repeating that. And farming today and from ever since, you have to read. You must read.
Not reading and not liking to read that two different things.
A lot of farmers are illiterate. That's what this gentleman was saying.
Well, all farmers are not illiterate.
No.
But I just said
is that supported by empirical evidence?
I said it.
Because I would like to think that the ones from ages 5 and up are beginning to learn and can read. And those are the people that we're not reaching right now. And still we expect that at 18, 19, and they're starting to look for life, that they should automatically see agriculture as the way to go.
Over here now.
I'm just curious to know if the 4-H movement is alive throughout the Caribbean.
It's a very good point. There's a patchy record for 4-H movement. The 4-H movement in Barbados recently took over, a few years back, took over the seed store that the ministry ran and started to do that. One of the success stories that comes out of that is their involvement at a national level with the agricultural exhibition, as it used to be known in my parents' and grandparents' time, as AgroFest. And AgroFest is an extraordinarily successful event held in the middle of town, in the park, so I can see botanical gardens being perfect for this. Where not only the agrochemical companies, but the livestock people, and the nurseries, and the fruit and veg people, and the juice makers, and the agro-processors, all converge. And the concept, all this being sold, is about healthy lifestyle. Because that is actually where the first exhibition of its kind was held. There was a healthy lifestyle show that the Nation newspaper organized. And they said, well, but there can be no better healthy lifestyle than a life out of agriculture, or should it be, minus the chemicals. And coming out of that was AgroFest and a revival of the agricultural exhibition for the 21st century. It's extremely popular. People get to taste, touch, feel agriculture. Do not look down on backyard farmers.
No, please don't look down on me, people.
Right? Me too. And what's happened is that many middle class people go up and say, but you know, I can't raise pigs in my backyard. Yes, you can raise pigs in your backyard. I don't know any pigs in Diego Martin, you tell me, or Diamond Vale, but they can grow as an ornamental a pineapple.
Yes.
Right? So that is how you really run horses for courses. In the whole area of food promotion, there are lots of food promotion officers. But the food promotion officers is one officer in the test kitchen, the Marion Harts of this world, working tirelessly. What support is there for food promotion? And I'll give you two success stories. One on poultry and the other one with pork. In Barbados right now, and I'm not using Barbados as just the be-all and all. I'm just giving you two examples that are current now, and you don't have to write a report about it and then find out it doesn't exist anymore. There's a very popular program called Egonomics, and it is using celebrities cooking dishes, and people texting. You all like your cell phone so much? Texting a vote for this person's dish. Right now it's Red Plastic by the Calypsonian and his chicken up against the former leader of the opposition, Mia Motley, and her dish. And the whole nation will get to decide which is the best dish. And what has also happened, because you'll be talking about integrating at the level of farmers, but if you're really talking about integrating young people in agriculture, you've got to really go from farm to table. There is a chef who has developed a very popular junior chef cook-off program with young people being judged by the Hospitality Institute and chefs from overseas. And they're developing dishes using what we grow. Nothing out of a can, unless the can is made in Barbados. So what I'm saying is, there are those opportunities. And it can be as simple as folklore. In a supermarket operator in Barbados had this concept of proper pork. It became such a powerful, it was backed up by getting proper supplies of fresh pork from farmers. But the proper pork slogan, marrying Bajan lingo with not very sophisticated techniques on TV and so on. You have two folk characters dressed up and so on, and you know, going and feeling a pig and saying, are you a boy or a girl? And that sort of thing. The results of the impact of that on pork production, my dear friends, is on the what used to be the Caribbean Regional Negotiating Machinery, now the Office of Trade Negotiation. The paper is there to show the development of the growth of the pork and the revival of the pork industry in Barbados on the basis of a simple campaign. Communication can be effective if you know how to use the tools. And I want our communicators in the ministry to be tool people, to walk around with tools and to share tools with extension officers on how to communicate more effectively, rather than throwing seeds on hard ground all the time.
Everyone here would agree that agriculture is a very scientific topic, and one, you will have to tool your communication persons with the means, the resources, and the approaches from which we would have learned from our experiences and from our educational institution. So we'll be able to apply those to our daily task. So that is what we're doing, and I am of the view that yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done where those are concerned, and we are seeking the partnership of the media houses. We're seeking the partnership of you, Julius, who is a regional person who is very passionate about agriculture, to go out there, help us come up with programs so that we could execute them together.
Well, my dance card is filled up for the balance of the year, but I'll get back to you. The only thing I would like to suggest, though, is do you see, Anika, do you see extension officers as communicators or as extension officers?
Well, I see extension officers as communicators as well, because one, they are the critical link in the chain between the ministries of agriculture, the policymakers, and the farmers themselves. And whatever it is that is being done has to be done from the ground up and not from the top down. So they are communicators, and they are in fact being trained to be communicators. As a matter of fact, as part of my work program, we had some internal training, and part of that training was to train extension officers to be communicators, whatever it is. And we have developed recently a communication policy, and anything that is being sent out to the media, or not even to the media, any booking, it has to be harmonized, and it has to pass through a central location, just to make sure that the message is for the persons that it is intended to be. I would also like to state that don't think our farmers are dunce, because they are not. They are farmers who are very technical, or even more technical than the persons who are telling them do this and do that. Farmers read. But how many of them, we will have to come up to say how many. You cannot lump everyone in one basket. There has to be a benchmark as to say, where do I draw the line? You yourself, Julius, has worked with journalists. You've trained them on many occasions, and you would have tell them, or even your reporters, you would have said, yes, language must be simple, but while the language is simple, you must know where to strike that middle ground. You have to know where to strike that middle ground to say, listen, you want to target this person and you want to target that person. So the language has to be coined, yes, simple, but in a way that everyone would understand. From the granny down English Harbor, and English Harbor is a community in Antigua, from granny down English Harbor to the scientists up in the skies.
Let me just make, in response to that, 2 final points. In fact, you could answer it for me. Have you ever been exposed to any form of communication training, or are you aware of any extension officers in the Ministry of Agriculture who've ever been exposed to communication training? You know your stuff, you're an expert in your field, but in communicating, both not necessarily technical with the media and so on, but in terms of basic communication, interpersonal communication. Have you an understanding how to use different tools for different settings, purposes, and objectives?
At UWI, I did a course called Communication for Professionals. So that's what I've been exposed to. But since working in the ministry, I haven't been exposed to any training. But our communication officer, she received some level of training, I believe, with the Commonwealth of Learning, where they run different programs on communication and media. The communication officer within the ministry, she was exposed to training in communication.
But does she pass on to the tools to you also that you can use? In other words, okay, even at a basic level, let's say you need to appear on the media, because obviously as an extension officer, you should be media ready. Somebody should be able to thrust a microphone in front of your face and ask you questions, and you'll be able to use the media to go directly to the farmer or whatever audience you have in mind. Have you ever had any training, or you're aware of any of your colleagues having that kind of training done by the communication professional?
No.
Right?
Not that I know.
So that's where we need to start. I put it to you folks. We need to start from 2 things. One, understanding that you cannot make assumptions about how communication works for the audiences that you're trying to reach. You continue to watch this molasses go uphill. The other thing I want to say in closing is that it's important to really reevaluate not only our techniques, but how we go about the whole process of communication. More often than not, in my experience, I'm hearing people raising their hands and say, not me, not me, not me. But in my experience across the Caribbean, across the board, communication is the very last thing that institutions generally think about. And they only think about it when the big boss is about to make a speech and he wants his PR person, his communication professional, to be there to take his gobbledygook and feed it to the masses. That until we change that across the board, we can't be raising our hands saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. It is also quite clear that there are instances where there are best practices that we are not sharing. And so this is an opportunity, I think, for Carapan especially, to really focus on sharing best practices in communication, what really works. Because the work is far more extensive. If you're saying to me that agriculture is about more than farm, and it's from farm to table and everything in between, and all the other disciplines that are involved, then you would have to agree that the communication effort must be as, if not more sophisticated. It is, and it's sophisticated by being simple. Run horses for courses. Get away from a speech gift for a minister that is 10 minutes long. And I'm sorry, I don't want to mash corns. No, actually I do. I don't really care for mash corns. What I see as communication coming out of ministries is really they're putting out what their ministry, and by extension the minister, and by extension the government, and by extension the ruling party, have done. That's it. Let's not fool ourselves. That is not communication. Saying we've done this and we've had 50, that looks good in reports. But it is not obviously working, or we wouldn't be here. It's not working. And I come back to the same 79-year-old farmer. You have to approach him differently than you're going to approach the farmers who are going to come after him. In the Caribbean, indeed so. In the Caribbean, we all feel that Christ is coming for his world tomorrow, so we don't plan. We don't have a strategy. We don't do a simple matrix that says, okay, I will use a poster to reach for a campaign. I have not seen a communication officer do it in any ministry other than the big three countries. That has to stop.
The big three.
Message matrix, a campaign that says we're going to use this tool, this message, this time, this place.
We have to do the for budget plan.
The big three. You're part of the big three.
No, Antigua is not part of the big three.
You see, this is the problem. To the extent that you think that you're successful, I can take you to another country where the officer has absolutely no training in communication, save the 1 or 2 courses that they're sent on. But we seem to think that we must get an ex-journalist to be a communication professional. That ex-journalist should have morphed into an individual who understands how to use the tools. Okay? Here endeth the reading. Thanks be to God.